Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our lunch. I hope you enjoyed your morning session. We will have a short prayer and then our meal, and our meal will be followed by remarks both from Dean Paul Benson and President Dan Curran. But before we get started with our meal, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Yusuf Farhat, who is a master's student in our public administration program in the political science department, as well as an indispensable component to the planning and management of the conference. So at some point over the course of the weekend, please everyone give him a thank you. But Yusuf is here for now to lead us in prayer before the meal.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll start my prayer with asking, Lord our God, you who wrap us in your presence, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this conference. Help us to engage in meaningful discussions. Allow us to grow closer as a group making use of us much better than we do ourselves. In this world that talks so much about human rights, there are still millions suffering greatly. Help us do all what we can, physically, morally, and legally, to support dialogue, foster reconciliation, and promote justice. Here at the University of Dayton, we remember Father Chaminade, who was himself a refugee witnessing revolutions in Europe. Let us discover a pragmatic vision for effective initiatives and new approaches for safeguarding dignity, improving the quality of life, and for facing challenges emerging from modern forms of persecution, oppression, and slavery. Today, our UD community lifts in thought and prayer Heather Bell. Heather, who graduated from our human rights program in May, tragically lost her life on Sunday. We mourn her passing and draw alongside her family, including her 2 sons, at this moment of deep loss. Take us under your protection so we help end all kinds of violence directed against humanity, and give us voice to those who aren't able to make their cries of pain and oppression heard. We ask these things in your name and give thanks for this food prepared by loving hands. Amen.
Hello again, everyone. I hope you're enjoying your meal. While the catering service continues through dessert, we are going to begin our program. And so it's my honor today to get it started. And in just a brief word, I arrived at UD just over a year ago. And since then, I've been really impressed how human rights work and ideas are a part of this institution. At other institutions, as many of you may be familiar, you have to really prove yourself. You have to demonstrate to the administration and even to students that what you do is worthwhile and that it's relevant and all the rest. And I haven't found that to be the case here. And it's one thing for faculty to be passionate about their work, and it's another thing for young idealistic students to be passionate about changing the world. And it's still another thing for university administration to get it, quite honestly. And I've been really impressed by the way in which the administration's been so closely engaged in the planning of this conference, and really helping us sort of shape the concepts and then helping us to execute it. So today it's my pleasure to introduce to you Dean Paul Benson to give some brief remarks. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Joel. I want to welcome everyone to the University of Dayton, for those of you who've come from near or far away, and just to convey our great pleasure at the interest that has been demonstrated in this conference and in the diverse group of scholars, students, organizers, activists, funders that have determined that they want to be in Dayton this weekend to carry on some rich conversations about new collaborations and relationships that could advance human rights advocacy, both in this country and around the world. Now, I'm not myself a human rights scholar or educator. As it turns out, I'm a philosopher who works in a fairly arcane area of philosophy known as moral psychology, which essentially concerns ways in which psychological phenomena concerning perception, emotion, choice, and intention interact with ethical phenomena. And one of the things I look at in particular is how social and historical settings shape those psychological drivers of moral motivation and conduct. And it wouldn't take a lot of imagination to realize that those social and historical factors bump up against human rights issues increasingly in a very, very significant way. So while I haven't explored those connections myself, I can tell you I have more than a passing scholarly interest in the work being done at this conference, but really much more importantly, a profound human interest and an interest as a member of the University of Dayton community. One of the reasons that we're so excited about our work educationally and in research in human rights across the disciplines here at UD has to do with a rich history. Beginning in 1991 and even a few years before that, we launched a number of major human rights projects through our Center for International Studies, beginning with a major conference in 1991, later formed an undergraduate concentration in 1998 in our International Studies program, which then became an academic minor, and then in 2007 formed one of the first undergraduate degree programs in human rights studies in the country. And around all of that activity over the past 20 plus years, we've seen that increasingly faculty across the university have been powerfully attracted to this kind of work, both younger scholars and more senior scholars. And these include faculty in just the College of Arts and Sciences from not only political science, international studies, sociology, anthropology, but also folks from English, from history, philosophy, religious studies, including people in visual arts and in geology. So there's growing momentum in the academic universe about ways in which human rights studies can become an organizing, driving factor of both curriculum but also of research. And certainly that's what we've experienced here at UD. But I'd be remiss if I didn't note that in the end, it's our students' passion for this kind of work that really has pushed us forward. Even if we ourselves were a bit less passionate about this, our students would have compelled response. Everything from demands for coursework, demands for research projects, demands for internships, interest in forming new student organizations, interest in developing co-curricular programs and conferences. This has been in large measure motivated by an outpouring of student interest over the past 20 years. And we see no reason to believe that this is some kind of temporary passing phenomenon. I think our students more and more, not only as young scholars and professionals, but as global citizens, see this as something that has to be a central part of their own lives, both professionally and personally. And we're trying to respond in a fruitful way to that interest. But finally, I just underscore that I think one of the reasons here at the University of Dayton our students are so passionate about this is that their passions connect so powerfully with the educational mission and philosophy that grounds the University of Dayton, one that has its roots in the Catholic social justice tradition, and in our own particular founding order, the Society of Mary's understanding of education, which speaks explicitly about education for service, justice, and peace, which talks about promoting respect for the dignity of all persons through dialogue and community building, and which seeks to cultivate leadership and solidarity with those persons, both near and far, who are most vulnerable, who are most marginalized, who are most endangered. So at UD, our strategic commitment to human rights education and research is not simply some kind of opportunistic response to a particular generation of students' interests in a particular moment in American and global history. It really is an expression of our fundamental mission as a university in both education and scholarship. In a moment, our president will offer some deeper reflections on that mission and that heritage. That mission is also one of the reasons why we're particularly honored to be in an active collaboration with Catholic Relief Services in a project entitled Scholars in Global Solidarity that we hope will end up unifying Catholic colleges and universities in the United States with service and advocacy projects through CRS around the world. A tremendous amount of work, as you all understand, has gone into organizing this conference. I couldn't begin to list exhaustively the folks who have made this possible. Let me simply name a handful of them to extend my thanks. Jason Pierce, Chair of the Political Science Department, Mark Ensalaco, Director of Human Rights Research, Natalie Hudson, Director of our Human Rights Studies Program, Joel Pruce, who's been our MC this afternoon, our postdoctoral fellow in Human Rights Studies, Yusuf Farhat, graduate student in MPA, and numerous advancement staff and other staff who have made this facility available for us and have served our food today. I want to convey particular gratitude to College of Arts and Sciences alumnus and advisory council member Peter McGrath, who's here with us for the conference, and especially to our president Dan Curran and provost Joe Saliba for their constant encouragement of this work. As Joel noted, sometimes it can seem to others on the outside of administration that it's easy to say yes. It always is a matter of setting priorities, of saying yes to some things and no to others. And both Dan and Joe have consistently said yes with authenticity and enthusiasm, and that's meant the world of difference to faculty and students at the university. So now it's my great privilege to introduce Daniel J. Curran, the 18th president of the University of Dayton, whose vision for this work has guided and sustained us. Dan Curran.
Good afternoon, everyone, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the conference. And this is a very significant conference for our university. And it's interesting, some of you were able to participate in a concert last night. This is really part of a year-long initiative for the university. I hope you can hear me now. I was just welcoming you. I'm happy to have you here. And I was saying that this is part of a year-long initiative on the part of the university from an interdisciplinary perspective to look at human rights education and research. And I'm going to build quite a bit on what Paul just said about the university and our history. Over a decade ago at my installation, and by the way, I'm a sociologist by training, I stated that the university, our university, must be a force for change. We must mobilize all the resources at our disposal to achieve this. As a community of learners and educators, we must analyze the causes of social injustice and educate professionals with a conscience. This is our collective task as a university. Now, it's always easy for a president to say things like that, but in truth, much of this falls on the shoulders of the faculty, the staff, and the students. And I'd like to say that the faculty, staff, and students have lived up to my declaration. In fact, they exceeded my expectations. Exceeded my expectations by a great margin. I also have to say it has engaged me in some very interesting conversations about human rights and social justice, and given me the opportunity to teach at times. For example, to teach that if your parking spot is too far away from your house, this is not a human rights violation. But today, I really want to touch on a few things. Again, go back to what Paul said, that the history and mission of the university is why we are committed to what we're doing today. I want to explain a little bit about how we have been living this mission and what we have achieved in the area of human rights. And finally, what we intend to do to build on this legacy. What's the next step? So again, in order to understand what we're doing as an institution, I think you have to understand the Maronist tradition of the university. I easily could have taken this talk from the Catholic social teaching perspective, but I think it's important for you to understand what the University of Dayton is about. Human rights, social justice has always been central to the Maronist, the Society of Mary's approach. The Society of Mary established what would be the University of Dayton in about 1850. The founder, Blessed William Joseph Chaminade, lived during the French Revolution, was influenced by the French Revolution. And I would have to say, if you read Chaminade's history, he certainly was very supportive of the principles of the French Revolution. Unfortunately, he found himself on the wrong side of the government. He refused to take the oath, the civil constitution of the clergy, that would require him to disclaim the authority of the Roman Catholic Church. He became a refugee. He was possible, if caught, it was possible that he would face the death penalty. Again, if you read the works, the letters of Chaminade, he clearly supported many of the issues brought forward during the French Revolution. But he had to approach this issue in a different way. And it's interesting, we often find ourselves in the position, and again, we'll talk about our relationship to Catholic Relief Services and so on, having to work and look at the situation. We often use the term, read the signs of the time. And again, Chaminade and his contemporaries in the order really were committed to this. And again, while this religious persecution obviously was a negative component of the French Revolution, you can't help but walk away and say this was a pivotal period in the formation of the order. And again, when you read the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen, I think a foundational work from the French Revolution, when you talk about human rights, you can't help but be struck by what they said. And when you compare it to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights passed in 1948 by the UN. Okay, again, at the time of the French Revolution, one of the opening statements was men, and I do believe, again, at that point, I will add, and women, I will add that. Men and women are born and remain free and equal in rights. Social distinctions may only be founded on the basis of common good. And again, the UN Declaration, all humans are born free and equal in dignity and rights. Chaminade came up in an early, interesting time. He had challenges. How would he, as a Maronist priest, be involved in this movement? And again, we face some of those issues today. Let me move on to give you a little more Maronist history and give you some background on the way we approach the whole issue of human rights. Another significant figure is Father William Ferree, and he acted as the superior of the Maronists in the United States. And his first major book in the 1940s was Introduction to Social Justice. And he wrote, an individual cannot practice social justice at all. He or she must be associated with groups of varying kinds and work along with them before they can practice social justice. He went on to have a number of characteristics that I think are very interesting and, again, reflect what we're doing. Again, most importantly, the fact that you cannot do it alone. Be it an enterprise here at the University of Dayton or going out and addressing something globally, we need partners. We need to move forward. So one, it's not an individual initiative. In fact, he would argue that you're helpless as an individual. You need others to move forward. Two, I think is a statement to warn us of the challenge. He said, you know, this may move slowly. It may move gradually. It is not going to happen overnight. Another characteristic he forwards, nothing is impossible. Things may be complex, too big, but realize no field was too vast. And we together could establish methodologies to address almost anything. Fourth, he talked about eternal vigilance, that the work is never going to be finished. And he went on to make some very interesting statements about the fact that we always cannot know what's ahead of us. We don't even know the consequences of our own actions. We need to continue to act and address issues that challenge human rights, and we have to continue to question ourselves and what we can do better. And finally, and importantly, he said, this is not a situation where you can take it or leave it. You cannot walk away. Human rights is central to our mission. He was speaking for the Society of Mary. He was also speaking for all the educational enterprises connected to the Society of Mary. This is not a take it or leave it situation. The final individual I'll refer to is Dave Fleming. He was a Superior General of the Mariners and actually spent time here with us and departed just this year to go back to India to work in his mid-70s. He was called again to do something special. Well, in one of his letters to the Society of Mary, he talked about the fact that we had to focus on what he referred to as solidarity, and solidarity means a lot of things. For him, educating for solidarity, and again, he's putting this out to the entire order and to all the ministries of the society. He said, educating for solidarity means helping people know the reality of today's world and understand the causes that make life difficult for millions of human beings. Educating for solidarity also means raising awareness of our responsibility as individuals, as nations, of followers of Jesus, to work to better the situation. As you can see, this is a continuing theme with the society since the 1800s. It's the themes that force us forward. And as I said, it's what has brought our students forward, and I agree with Paul's comment. The students are driving much of what is happening here at UD. And because of the collaboration with faculty who have such energy, we've been able to move forward. So again, this initiative is at the heart of our university. It was easy as an administrator to say yes. This is something that we cannot take or leave, as Father Farie indicated. So, what have we been doing? And this is my time to sort of brag about what the students have been doing, what the faculty have been doing. And again, we have a long history of social service initiatives at the university. Dakota House in Dayton. We've had students going to Appalachia since the mid-50s. It's been a wonderful experience. But as Paul referenced, there was a change in the early 90s. And again, we had a conference there. The first conference was entitled Human Rights, Past, Present, and Future. And from that, we have the establishments of the programs Paul referred to. If you look at our new core curriculum, and I won't go into that today, that would take a good hour at least. Although I must say Mark had, before I started this, I asked Mark to give me some bullet points to what he think I should say. If I tried to cover those bullet points, we'd be here for 3 hours. So we're not going to do that. But again, as I look at what's happened since, again, 91, we've had this continuing growth, continuing commitment of students and faculty. So the students, again, and I could not be proud of those students, you can talk about in 2004, we had Human Rights Week initiated by students. Multidisciplinary, many academic departments, faculty, students presenting their research. Great step forward. 2012, students come forward and say, we want a conference. It's going to be called Consciousness Rising. The students on their own, they wanted to address the issue of human trafficking. Faculty got behind them, and this is going to be a conference we do every year. It's an expanding conference, and it comes from the students. So again, this will be the third year. In 2009, students came forward, again around the issue of human trafficking, and a passionate group of students formed the new abolitionist movement. Here again, and I agree with Paul, we're looking not only at research, we're looking at advocacy. We want to move out. And again, this new abolitionist movement, I thought had one of the major accomplishments. In 2010, they won and aggressively lobbied the Ohio State Legislature to enact a law to make human trafficking a criminal offense. They wanted to step up. They wanted more activity. So again, they stood, our students stood beside the governor of the state of Ohio when he signed this bill. We were front and center. So it's just a wonderful, wonderful accomplishment. There's many other conferences we've had over this period of time. I don't want to go over them, ranging from the rights of children, violence against women, human rights and peace, torture, truth, justice, and reconciliation. Again, faculty, students, bringing in experts to really inform not only our community, but to reach out, as we have in this conference, to bring other people in. The Romero Award, another thing we brought forward. And again, we've been fortunate to do this from 2000 to bring, again, a human rights activist on campus and acknowledge his or her work. And one of our recipients, Juan Mendez, will be speaking, I think, via video this evening, tomorrow. And again, he's not here because he's very actively involved in a investigation, which we may be able to comment about, but he is out there in the field. So again, I could go on and brag about our students and our faculty, but I'll stop here. Let me close by making a few comments about commitment. It's great to have a lot of faculty and students doing individual programs. But what we believe we need at the University of Dayton at this time is a center, clearly a center for human rights. And Peter McGrath has been referred to earlier. Peter has been a significant supporter of this effort. Peter, I thank you for what you're doing. But again, his generous gifts gave us a start. We have to go beyond that. So today I'm very happy to announce that the university is committed to establishing a human rights center. In fact, a strategic planning committee chaired by the Director of Human Rights Research, Mark, and Paul, the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, have been trying to lay the foundations for this for several years. And again, when you think about the theme of this conference, we talk about charting the frontiers of research and advocacy. That's what we're going to be about. We are going to try to be right there with cutting-edge research, asking a variety of questions, but we also want to make sure that when our students are here and when they leave this institution, they are going to be speaking, they are going to be advocating, they are going to be educating others about this issue. So again, we're excited. We want all of our partners to move forward with us. We want to be a resource for you. We want to challenge what is in front of us, all the pain that's in the world. We want to be an effective force out there in the world. So at this point, I'm going to stop, and we have one project that I would like Mark to step up and address. And again, this is with Catholic Relief Services, and we'll be doing this in South America. But Mark, why don't you step up, and after that, we'll have Bill O'Keefe step up also, and we're going to sign a memorandum of understanding. So again, thank you for being here. I hope many of you will move forward with us as we establish this Human Rights Center. And again, we all have a common objective. It's a big challenge, and we'll move forward together. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, President Curran. So this is a major announcement. We're committed to establishing a Human Rights Center in many ways. The university's already been doing that work in education. The program we founded back in 1998 in Human Rights Studies is now directed by one of our very first graduates, Natalie Hudson. It's amazing. We've been doing education for a long time. Programming, events like this, as Dr. Curran said, and research, but we're going to take research in a new direction. And in many ways, it's applied research, working at the frontiers of research and advocacy. And so I want to discuss very briefly a project we are going to undertake with Catholic Relief Services before President Curran and Bill O'Keefe of Catholic Relief Services signed an MOU. We reached out to Catholic Relief Services some time ago. We'd already been involved, as Dean Benson said, in a project called Scholars in Global Solidarity. It's an excellent project, and it will go on. But we asked, what more could we do, thinking about this emerging center? And so we approached Catholic Relief Services and said, we would like to conduct research that perhaps you would need to be more effective in your advocacy to eliminate forced labor in Brazil and the surrounding countries. What do you need to know? How can we help? And they gave us a list of 3 fundamental questions. Help us identify products made through forced labor that are in a supply chain in the United States. Help us analyze regional norms so that we can strengthen them. Okay? Help us identify other organizations in the region that are working on this issue, and help us analyze their practices so that we can have a regional effort over the next few years to eradicate slave labor. And we said, we think we can do that. We have expert faculty here. A number of us have been working on human trafficking. My colleague, Anthony Talbot, with Abolition Ohio, has been doing it here, other colleagues. But we reached out to others and formed a working group to address these questions, right, for Catholic Relief Services. But the goal is advocacy, research for advocacy. We want to raise consumer and producer and investor awareness about the existence of products contaminated by slave labor in the supply chain, things we consume. We want to promote corporate social responsibility, something that Peter McGrath, with his many years of service with JCPenney, has really exemplified. We want to push that. Right? We want to strengthen regional norms, and we want to strengthen regional efforts to eradicate slave labor. So that's the project. It's taken some time to work it out, 2 careful organizations. We now have a memorandum of understanding. I will just simply say this, the project proposal is 2 pages. The memorandum of understanding produced by General Counsel is 13 pages. All necessary. But we're very proud of this initiative, and so I'd really like at this time to invite Dr. Curran back up, and Bill O'Keefe, who's Vice President for Government Relations and Advocacy at Catholic Relief Services, to finally sign this thing so we can get to work.
Thank you very much, President Curran and Mark and guests, for being here for the signing of this Memorandum of Understanding, which, to borrow the language of President Curran, this initiative is at the heart of Catholic Relief Services and what Catholic Relief Services is trying to do around the world as the American Catholic Communities Relief, Development, and Social Justice Organization. We are deeply honored and very much appreciate this partnership with the University of Dayton. And there are really three reasons for that. The first is, for us, collaborating with the University of Dayton is an example of how we can bring the expertise of others, scholarly research, evidence, monitoring, and evaluation to help us make sure that we are providing the highest quality, most effective, and sustainable overseas development responses to the problems that we see in the 90 countries around the world where we operate. The second thing is, as part of the Catholic community basing its work on Catholic social justice and the deep theology that supports that, we have an integrated view of social development in the world. And that corresponds very closely with the interdisciplinary approach of this initiative. We're looking for complex solutions to complicated problems, or maybe complicated solutions to complex problems. You get the point. We need to get at the root causes of the social injustice that we are facing. And I think in Brazil and the surrounding region, this project is going to help us to do that. Finally, as part of our mission, we are educating and engaging Catholics in the United States and students. And so the prospect of students from the University of Dayton participating and being enlivened and engaged in the vocation of helping the poor around the world and the vocation of addressing root causes of social injustice and the terrible human rights abuses that we face, this is at the center of what we are about. So it was really a great honor for us to enter into this partnership. We are deeply confident in its success and the collective impact that we are going to have on people who are suffering under unbelievable conditions of slave labor in Brazil and in the surrounding region. And with that note, I express my deep appreciation and thanks again. All right.
Thank you all very much. Without further ado, I guess we can all proceed to the 1 o'clock session. We'll have 2 sessions this afternoon and then proceed to the evening after that. So thanks very much.